Okay, so we're back. We got the board on the table here, and we're going to start wiring it using the Three Monkeys solderless connectors. We've got our DC connector here and our audio connector here. We actually have the only DC solderless connector, and we've got a patent on that. And our audio connector is a no tool other than something like a box cutter to cut your wire with. No tool, no stripping system available. You just basically screw the tip on to your cable, and when it bottoms out, you're done. So there you have that. I'm going to place this back in there. I've got everything laid out where I want it. And what I like to do first is I like to do the DC, do the power first. So I've got some cable, right, the formable DC cable. And the only tools that I'm going to need is I got a wood block right here for cutting. I've got myself a good box cutter with a fresh blade in there, and you're going to want, this is probably the best tool for cutting your cable nice and cleanly and square. We don't recommend using wire cutters unless they're extremely sharp, and trust me, you can't get those at the home center. And then just a screwdriver here for lifting up the pedals that we have screwed down to the board. All right, so the way I like to do it is basically start from the furthest point and lay everything out far to far, right? So in terms of how this is going to work, I'm seeing that port number 1, and I've already labeled it all out over here so I know offhand. Port number 1 here is going to feed the lexicon. Port number 2 is going to feed our breakout box that we made in an earlier video. Port number 3 is going to feed the Echoplex. Port number 4 is going to feed the entry interface, which has a kind of a complement or a courtesy output on there for powering the flanger. So the box and the flanger will be powered from port number 4, and port number 5 will power the phase 90. You may have noticed that these 3 aren't being mentioned, but they are all powered from our breakout box from port number 2. So I just like to have things sort of like stacked, one on top of the other. So we're going to go this way, and then we're going to go this way, and then we're going to go this way, then we're going to go this way, and then we're done. So it makes things very neat where they're not kind of overlapping one another, or you've got them crossing this way. It just looks really nice. Now, I'm not the neatest at this compared to some of the pictures I've seen, and a lot of people have been sending in their photos of their board builds after they purchase our products, and we post those up on Instagram. And some of them are just ridiculously neat. Charbono, I hope you're not watching this, because this is going to be an embarrassment. So anyway, yeah, thanks to everybody who sends in pics, and I'm going to try to make this as neat as possible. So I'm going to begin with port number 1. So just to start off, and we're not going to show the whole thing, I'm going to make one length of cable for you and show how I like to do it. And it should cover all the basics, and then I'll sort of come back and forth as time elapses and show you the progress. So basically, I take my cable, I put it on the wood block, place my box cutter on the edge, and just press down with my thumb just to chop it straight down. No sawing, right? We don't do that, just straight down like a guillotine, and it'll cut it off dead clean like that. No hairs or fibers sticking out to interfere with your connection. Next step would be you've got your DC plug, and this is how you make it. You just place it like so, and then start turning it, right? And then you're going to feel a little bit of resistance, but when you feel it kind of bottom out, which is right there, that cable is ready to go. All right, so we're going to go into port 1 over here. Okay, get that guy in there. And we may need to lift up one end of this here. Let's see if we can get it in. Yeah, we got it in. All right, so we're going to feed this line nice and neatly, leaving a little bit of room because I'm going to use like some tie downs to fasten this stuff to the board, which will really make the whole system bulletproof. So I'm basically right now just measuring out to the lexicon unit. So right about here is where I want to make my next cut. So I'm just going to place that on the cutting board here, take out my box cutter once again, get it squared up to the cable, press down, and it's chopped. Retract the blade so I don't cut my fingers off, and then go ahead and screw on the other end. Okay. And then we have that. Now we're going to need to lift up the lexicon unit, as this board has everything nice and nested together to take advantage of the small profile of the connector, so we could get, save real estate. So basically, when you want to pull something in and out, you're probably going to want to do this, right? Lift it up off the board, get your connector in its place, right? Bend your wire, and like I said, this wire is formable. So what you'll find is that when you bend it into a shape, it'll stay that way. So that's really, I think, how guys are really making their board super neat, is that the cable really likes to stay in the shape that you put it in. All right, so we're going to go and tuck that back, and we're going to make it nice and neat. And that looks good right now for me right there. So we got our first cable done. You sort of saw the procedure of how to cut it, how to screw on the cable, how to lay it out, what you want to do in terms of, if your pedals are nested, to have your screwdriver handy for lifting up your pedals while you're doing it and then putting them back down again. And then we can just go through powering every single one of these things. So maybe I'll show you just one more, which is going to the breakout box. So I'm going to grab my length of cable. And I actually forgot which end. No, I didn't. That side is really jagged from using a wire cutter. So this is our clean cut edge. I'm going to take my connector once again and screw it on. Very simple. And that's done there. Get our box cover out of the way and board out of the way. We're going to go into port number 2, right? So I'm going to bend that down. Go into port number 2. There we go. And then I'm going to follow on the outside edge and run these two cables basically parallel to one another, so that there's the neatness factor coming in there for our measurement. Now this is heading to our breakout box port, which is right here. So it looks like right about there is where we want to cut our cable. So I'm going to back it out again. I'm going to bring our board back into play, grab our box cutter, take out the blade, line it up nice and square, press down, chop it, grab another connector, just screw it on, right? Done. I'm going to bring it over, I'm going to bend it 90 degree, and then I'm just going to go ahead and place it into the port here, and this is going to power our breakout box. Okay? Now, when you get your kits, your DC kits, if you're interested in using our product, which I do recommend, you're going to notice that you get in the kit some of this heat shrink, right, with the Three Monkeys logo on it. Now you can opt to use them. I don't, because if everything is where it's supposed to be, you're not going to have these cases, touching anything that would be either a ground or a hot point or another point on the pedal board, if you're laying everything out correctly. If you like the look of the little the little logo on there, you can go ahead and heat shrink them down. I prefer the look of the of just the nickel finish on these and the knurling. I think it's really beautiful, and it's extra money to get them to look this way. They're really kind of cool jewelry kind of like looking pieces. So I don't like to cover it up with the heat shrink, but you can. But I've never done it, and I've had my pedal boards. I've probably got 4 of them in play right now that I've been using for years, for almost 3 years in some cases, and haven't had an issue ever with it. And also being that this stuff is 12 volt, 9 volt, 18 volt, 300, 400, 500 milliamp. Don't worry about whether you're going to be electrocuted. I sincerely doubt that anybody in the audience could even feel it. I would say 99.99% of people couldn't even tell that they were touching a cable that has 12 volts at 500 milliamps or 18 at 500 going through it. Maybe if you put it on your tongue, which I'm not recommending, you might be able to feel it, like when you test a battery on your tongue. But there's no dangers here for any of that. I mean, I think I've fielded a couple of questions in the past of people saying, is it dangerous to touch these DC connectors, being that they're not, you know, that you have a center negative connection on both of these, which means the case is hot. To voltage, it's positive voltage, and my answer is absolutely positively no. You have nothing to worry about until you get above, you know, quite a considerable way above 18 volts and put some amperage through there. You really have nothing to worry about. I mean, you touch your car battery, right? And your car battery is, you know, a lot more amperage than 500 milliamp. We're talking full amp. So anyway, let's leave it here, and I'm going to continue wiring, and then I'll get back. So thanks. All right, so we're back, and we have the DC supply system all cabled up. It was literally 5 minutes, maybe less than that, to do all the connections. Try that soldering or any other method. I'd be here for an hour. But anyway, the next step that I like to do is I've got these guys, which are available in the electrical aisle of any home center, and they're just a kind of like a tie down. Okay, and some of these, basically they're called lathe screws. They're just a big pan head kind of wood screw that's used in the roofing business. So you'll find those in the hardware aisle too of the home center. And what I like to do with these is basically bundle my wires together, right? And that adds reliability. Anytime you bundle wires together, it makes the whole group more stable. So that's why you'll see, you know, these used in your home. Why they'll be used in aircraft, why they're used in amplifier building. You can use, you know, zip ties if you like too. Those are kind of cool too. I might do a combination of zip ties and tie downs. These to keep them in, let's say, moving backward and forward, and the zip ties for keeping them bundled together nice and tightly. And that is really, in my opinion, the secret to a very reliable system. Anything with wires in it is to make sure that they're tied to one another, that it increases their rigidity, it increases their stiffness, it increases, if you pull on them, there's a lot more inertia to move one out of the way. They stabilize one another. So I really recommend doing that. So I think we're good for the DC supply. We'll just plug it in real quick. You can see everything's lighting up nice. We got the MXR, we got the delay, we got the, oh, we didn't do the phase 90 yet. All right, so we got to run the phase 90 still. So I got one more to do. Let's do that real quick right here while we got you. We'll do the last cable. It's kind of embarrassing to not have done them all, but that's life. All right, so we got our two connectors again. We get our cable, get the clean end, clean cut end. We're going to run into these. And I'm just going to do this while the thing is on, so we'll get immediate satisfaction. Move our end over to there. I'm going to bend down on this guy right here. I'm going to place it into the port, number 5 port, which we have designated for the phase 90. I'm going to kind of follow the other cables so that they can be tied to one another. I'm going to measure it off to where I want it, which would be right about there. I'm going to bring it to this point. I'm going to give it a quick chop. Right. I'm going to take my other end. I'm going to screw it on here. Give ourselves bottomed out. I'm going to place it into the unit, put it down, and there we go. Good to go. All right, so now we're done. So we got the MXR on, the Echoplex on, the flanger on, the IR response or IR loader on, this guy on, the Lexicon. This is not powered. This obviously is the pedal fire, which requires a 120 volt supply, so it's obviously not powered from this guy. Some of these have an external 120 volt sort of outlet on it as well, which is kind of cool because you could power from this to this unit and only have one AC cable leaving your board, but I'm going to have 2. I may use a Y cable for that. And then we're obviously still waiting for our second studio compressor, which will be powered from this port right here. All right, so let's leave it here, and I'll start working on the audio path next. Okay.